It is such an honor to have you, Minister. Thank you so much for joining us. So Somalia is really on the front lines of the climate crisis. It is facing the worst drought in decades, widespread malnutrition. I visited Badoa and Mogadishu in August, and the stories I heard were devastating. Can you talk a bit about what your country is going through?
Yes, thank you. Yes. And yes, Somalia is going through a lot of the climate change, and this is the biggest challenge now we have in Somalia. And that's what I mentioned a while ago. The biggest challenge as well of the, as mentioned, floods and droughts. And Somalia depend on the rain, especially agricultural areas. So it's making droughts in the areas of the droughts, other floods. That's the only country that facing the two problem that in the year every year. And for decades we didn't see rain, and it seems like there should be the rain that what we're expecting is not going to be the same issue. So we have the supplies of the food areas and the and agricultural areas. This is the main problem that we have at the moment, the challenges in the climate change.
So Somalia has a new president who came into office in May and really has prioritized the environment and climate change. And so, for the first time in Somalia this year, there's a Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. And you are the first minister of Somalia's Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. What's your vision for the ministry? Kind of what do you expect moving forward?
Um, that's an interesting question. And Somalia, as I mentioned, we don't have the capacity of the knowing the environment of the challenge of the climate change, and the people don't have aware of the climate change, and this is the reason that the president and the whole government, the prime minister, denominate established the new ministry, because of Somalia felt the heat of the climate change. And this is the biggest challenge as well the government have, as at the side we fighting on terrorism, and the side we fighting on the climate change. And the climate change doesn't have ID or passport, so we don't know the main challenges that we have, starting from establishing a ministry, starting from the ground. We building the institution, and we working on how to build the capacity building for the ministry, and this is the main important. And as you mentioned, this is the first time Somalia arrived in the COP of huge numbers of COP 27, and it's the first time, as you mentioned, Minister of Environment and the President of Somalia was here. And this is how serious Somalia is today about the climate change. So our strategic is building the ministry, finding a solution how to fight against the climate change, finding of the main important for us is the challenge as well. We need early warning system for Somalia for the data. If we don't have a data, and if we don't even know what's coming about the rain, about everything that we need to have a data. So this is the first priority, how to get early warning system to know what's happening on the ground. So almost 25 years, Somalia didn't have no early warning system. This is what our basic things needed for the moment to have it in Somalia.
And I know one of the challenges that Somalia faces is accessing climate financing. It's a very difficult bureaucratic process to access funds from like the Green Climate Fund. Can you talk about some of those challenges?
Yes, Somalia, the voice of Somalia was not very high. As I mentioned, that we didn't had no experience on and no background about the climate change. And that's the reason that we couldn't get enough fund. And that's why we're here today, to raise our voice and ask for the fund and help the Somalia, because Somalia is the horn of Africa. And anything about the climate change affecting Somalia, it will affect the world. So this is the time that I think this is the time that we need, as soon as possible, fund and the biggest project to able to establish in Somalia this moment right now.
And one of the big issues as well is resilience building, kind of looking at, because droughts and floods are coming so frequently, communities are not able to rebuild before another drought disaster happens. I'm wondering what you think Somalia needs in terms of investments in resilience programming, and kind of what you see as important investments in nature-based solutions.
The first thing is the renewable energy. That's the main fact. That's the first thing, and we need a private strategic financing and priority for us for the work established and economic and the climate resilient. Considering our financial institution, we cooperate with our organization to make similar to access the international funding and climate change. And this third thing is the opportunity for economic growing fund Somalia, looking at the country programming because of the main economics of the full potentially of fishing underground has not yet been realized in Somalia. So an investment in the blue economic promoting resilience and communities. So this is the areas that we really need to be able to work on it in Somalia, to able to have the resilience and for the community economic.
And right now, a big issue at COP is the issue of loss and damage. What would loss and damage financing mean for Somalia?
Meaning that what Somalia of the lost and damage because of the people. We had the two rivers in Somalia. Somalia don't have no factories, as the countries that were Somalia have they have two rivers, and one of the rivers now the water is gone and it become playground on the ground. So loss and damage, our culture side, food security, all these things has been damaged in Somalia. And as I mentioned before, and I repeated, Somalia didn't have aware about the climate change. So as I mean, the loss and damage, I think is the thing is very important to put on the COP27 agenda. And but what we're looking at the moment is what will be happen the next, and this is our priority now of the loss and damage, and what we need to do at the moment for the Somalia, and financially how can we stop what's happening on the ground in Somalia about the climate change.
And beyond loss and damage, what are Somalia's demands here at COP27?
Of course, we lost a lot of things in Somalia of the loss and damage, and as I mentioned, our culture side, food side, even costing of the food security, the impact that the people had socially of the human being, that they had impact of the climate change. So this is the kind of area that we looking for the loss and damage that has been lost in Somalia. A lot of things about the damages that happen for the people as well, and especially for the women.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Thank you. We need the reason that we're here today about the COP27 support in Somalia, Africa especially, and Somalia is the horn of Africa. And we need this. We need support financially. We need support in the agenda of Somalia, that situation that we have at the moment, and all of you have knowing that the endemic of the corona how took us 2 years just to find vaccine. So we've been through such a things like that in all human being in the globally. And at the moment that we think now we need to look Africa, especially developing countries, seeing the damages of happen of the countries like Somalia and Africa. So we need, as soon as possible, urgently, for Somalia support in financially how about the impact happened in Somalia about the climate change, and could be able to affect other countries as well in the world. So this is the support and raising our voice that we need to support Somalia and Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. It was a pleasure speaking with you.